Welcome back. We're here at TLDC in lovely San Diego with Margie Meacham from LearningToGo. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hi, it is great to be here. Thanks.
You enjoying the show?
Oh, yeah. There's so much to learn and really interesting sessions. Really a nice mix of technology and learning theory and brain science, and it's all coming together.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do at LearningToGo?
Yeah. Well, what we do is we apply brain science to enhance learning and performance. So I go into an organization, and usually I work with the instructional designers and the trainers, and I teach them brain-based learning and what we're just finding out of this really infant science of neuroscience and how that applies to what we're doing as learning professionals. So It changes the way you approach getting attention. For example, understanding that the human brain has evolved in the last couple generations because of our digital explosion to being much less able to pay attention for a long period of time. A lot of speakers this week mentioned the fact that our attention span is now shorter than that of a goldfish.
It's like 7 seconds or something like that.
Some people say 6, some people say 8.
6 now? Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Depending on the study, but basically very, very quick. And that's actually a good thing because what our brain is doing is scanning the environment and making sure it's safe. But that means that you have to know that, like right now in this interview, people are going to watch it and they're going to zone out every few seconds and then come back. So you need to be ready to repeat your content if you want people to remember it.
Okay.
Find different ways of saying it, different ways of presenting it, not just tell it once and expect them to get it. So that's just one example of how neuroscience is telling us that we may need to change or modify the way we're approaching training.
That's fascinating. So neuroscience, it kind of seems like it's a new buzzword in the last 5-10 years. Is that right?
Yeah. Now, I've been tracking it for more than 10 years.
Okay.
It really started with the ability to see a human brain live while it's working, which we could only do about 15 years ago with the invention of the functional MRI. And at first it was just doctors, and they were looking at like brain tumors and things, diseased brains. And then somebody said, hey, we should just look at some normal brains.
Healthy brains.
Yes, healthy brains, see what they're doing. So it's been gradually building. The challenge right now, unfortunately, is I think there's a lot of folks out there, you use the term buzzword, they recognize the buzz, and so they're just kind of grafting it on to things that may not necessarily be neuroscience, and they're just calling it the neuroscience of anything, because they know that'll get attention, they know that people will buy that. So you have to be very careful to make sure that what you're getting from someone is something that's really grounded in science. There's also a lot of folks overstating what neuroscience can do for us right now because it's just in its infancy. So it's usually a small takeaway like that, not if somebody has a huge scheme, that is probably not really grounded in science because the science isn't there yet. And we have to wait for science to give us those insights before we can implement it.
Gotcha. So aside from integrating neuroscience into corporate training, corporate learning, e-learning, you mentioned that you do, we need to repeat things more frequently. How else are you integrating neuroscience into the learning industry?
I think another thing that we've always known actually a lot of this, because when you work with helping people learn, you figure out by trial and error what works. What's different now is now it's validated. Now we can say the reason we do this has a scientific basis to it. So another thing that we've discovered is the value of visual information. Your brain processes it much quicker. It actually, every other sense in our body also has a visual component. It's a very interesting study that just come out that showed that when you hear something, your brain immediately creates a picture of what you've heard, what you think it's heard, and it's so on with all the other senses. So that makes vision really the number one way to process information. And we've always known that. That's why we are always trying to get our SMEs to take the words off the slides and give us a nice visual. Well, now we've got some science behind that. And particularly with a very science-oriented subject matter expert, you might win your case a lot better with that than with the psychological argument now. So an awful lot of it is stuff we're doing already. Now we can go forward knowing that our instincts were right. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. So are you finding that the industry is really receptive to this and is really embracing this?
It depends on where you are in the industry.
Okay.
And you're probably familiar with the Gartner hype cycle. So we're kind of at the peak of the hype right now. So there's a lot of interest. There's a lot of people who want to know about it. And there's also people who are already starting to get into that trough of disillusionment where they're saying, oh, this is all hype, because unfortunately a lot of it is. And so depending on where an individual is at on that cycle, they're either like, oh my God, this is changing my life.
Really cool, yeah.
Or they're like, oh, come on, not another thing on neuroscience.
Right.
It's all hokey.
Right.
And the truth is somewhere in between. And we're going to get there, but we're not quite there yet. So I think we need to let some things shake out, but that doesn't mean you should wait to start applying it. You know, you just need to use a little common sense. And if people can't tell you where the research came from, or they're making sweeping generalizations without anything to back it up, well, you know, you might want to steer clear of that.
Gotcha. Well, Margie, thank you so much for sharing that with us. This is fascinating. It'll be really neat to see how this progresses in the industry, and hopefully people will embrace this. And good luck to you guys.
Great.
Wish you the
Thank
best.
you.
Thank you so much, and enjoy your stay in San Diego.
Thanks.
Thanks, Margie. We'll talk to you guys soon.